Hello and welcome to our podcast. It's Chris.
And Shradi, and this is our final U.S. research presentation proving why criminal psychology and the Mad Bomber case from 1940 to 1957 was the gateway to the modern criminal justice system.
Criminal profiling is defined as a technique whereby the probable characteristics of a criminal offender or offenders are predicted based on the behaviors exhibited during the crime scene. Today, criminal profiling is an integral part of the criminal justice system, and its process of profiling criminals has helped put away numerous serial killers, arsonists, and rapists. Though criminal profiling is a very important part of the system today, it was not always like this.
The first reported uses of profiling was way back in 1888 during the Jack the Ripper case by Thomas Bond. Then, about 60 years later, across the Atlantic, New York City began to be tormented by what the media dubbed as the Mad Bomber. A man later known as George Metesky in 1940 began building and detonating bombs throughout the city. After getting injured at work and believing his employer was cheating him out of workers' compensation payments.
Despite years of diligent efforts by some of the most seasoned police officers and investigators the New York City Police Department had to offer, no viable leads were discovered, leaving the city stumped on what course of action they should take next. That was until an inspector from the New York City Crime Lab named Howard Finney offered a radical new approach. Consult psychiatrist James A. Brussel to shed light on a case that had been up until this point a seemingly impossible one to solve.
James Brussel was a man who bolstered an impressive professional background as Assistant Commissioner of Mental Hygiene for the state of New York, and was also head of the U.S. Army's neuropsychiatry unit during the Korean War, plus training as a psychoanalyst. Brussels was also described as a wiry, sharp-witted, no-nonsense man with a loud voice and sharp opinions. All of this experience made him a perfect candidate to help solve the case. On December 2nd of 1956, after another one of the Mad Bomber bombs went off in a crowd, injuring 6, Finney contacted Brussels, who he hoped could answer the many question marks that the case still offered. After accepting the offer, Brussels pored over the police records of the bombings, which led him to developing his criminal personality profile.
The profile Brussels came up with was that the unsub was a male with a grudge against his former employer, along with paranoid tendencies, believing his company and the public were out to get him. He also surmised the suspect was approximately 50 years old, of European descent, and that he was a deliberate man who dressed professionally and was very sensitive to criticisms. Brussels' assumptions didn't just come out of thin air, though. There was a science behind his art. He believed the bomber was a male because historically most bombers had been male, and that he had a grudge against his company based on the letters he had sent to the media. Paranoia was indicated because paranoid tendencies peak at around the age of 50, and the fact that the bomber had been active up to this point for 15 years led Brussels to that discovery. His characteristics were based on how carefully his letters and bombs were crafted. Brussels was also able to conclude that the bomber lives in Connecticut with either his brothers or sisters and suffers from what psychiatrists call an Oedipus complex.
Brussels told detectives to publish the profile in order to antagonize the bomber, which worked. Soon after the publication of the profile, the bomber finally revealed his motive. which was identical to what Brussels assumed, and based on that, finally led to the capture of George Metetsky. That wasn't the only part of the profile that was spot on. Metetsky also did live with 2 sisters, was middle-aged, and was also well-groomed. Metetsky was found criminally insane and committed to an institution. More than 36 bombs went off while Metetsky was active, and after being institutionalized, was released back to his home in Connecticut in 1973, where he died 20 years later in 1994 at the age of 90. Because of his work on the case, Brussels was dubbed the Sherlock Holmes of the couch. After this case, Brussels' criminal psychology process caught the attention of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
His work inspired the FBI to begin developing a program to standardize his profiling techniques with 2 other men named Howard Tenon and Patrick J. Mullaney. The 3 men created a seminal course in applied criminology, which led to the creation of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, later renamed the Behavioral Analysis Unit. Think shows like Criminal Minds. The BAU was official in 1977 and was ready to begin making predictions to help catch violent offenders ranging from serial killers to arsonists to rapists. Throughout the time the FBI began developing its profiling programs, they faced many criticisms. Criminal profiling is considered by many to be an art rather than a science backed up by facts. Many homicide detectives also embrace profiling with skepticism and disdain because of its weak standards of proof and the fact that it has no governing body to oversee its research.
While profiling still has a way to go before being fully embraced by the scientific community, there's no doubt that Brussels was the one who started it all and was a pioneer in the field. From the Mad Bomber case to the present, the field of criminal profiling has continued to evolve despite its flaws. Now has an accuracy of 82%. In 2000, after years of development and being questioned on its accuracy of its profilers, a study was used to determine its accuracy, taking place over the course of 6 years, with nearly 450 participants were tested, including various skill-based groups such as professional profilers, police detectives, fire investigators, psychologists, university students, and even psychics. The results supported the practice of profiling. The mean accuracy scores of each group showed that the profile group surpassed the other groups in the ability to predict accurately the characteristics of an unknown offender. Rather than serving as an unequivocal endorsement of profiling, however, this research yielded a number of unanticipated results. Consequently, not all people in this group were equally proficient. These findings provided some long-awaited scientific evidence to support the validity of profiling.
Since 1970, the FBI profiling has been slowly becoming an important part of the modern criminal justice system and has helped put away countless criminals for its horrific crimes they have committed. Even though it has faced criticisms every step of the way, it has continued to improve its process and ability to accurately profile criminals, making it today an important part of catching some of the most dangerous people the world has ever seen. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Chris
and Shradi reporting. For any further questions, visit the links on our website. Thank you and good night.